Listener, our guest is someone who is boldly challenging ageist narratives and reshaping how we view aging in the workplace, in society, and in ourselves. Helen Hirsh Spence is a seasoned educator, thought leader, and passionate advocate for age equity. After decades in leadership across Canada's public and private education sectors, Helen experienced ageism firsthand, an experience that became a powerful catalyst for her next chapter. She went on to found Top 60 Over 60, a groundbreaking initiative that promotes positive aging, intergenerational collaboration, and the immense value older adults bring to our communities and workforce. Her 2024 TEDx Talk struck a chord with audiences around the world with over 100,000 views in its first month. In this conversation, Helen and I explore the roots of her advocacy, the lingering impacts of age discrimination, and the urgent need for a culture shift as we all live longer, fuller lives. Get ready to be inspired by Helen's clarity, conviction, and vision for a more age inclusive world. As she often shares, age is not a barrier, it's an asset. We must reimagine aging for the 21st century. Oh boy, welcome to Don't Be Caged by Your Age, Helen. I'm so happy you're here to share your pro-aging advice and wisdom with us. How you doing?
I'm doing just great. And thanks for the invitation. This is going to be so exciting to talk with you.
Oh my gosh, especially given all the incredible work that you've done in this category. But before we begin, we're all about aging out loud and proud on the podcast. It's so liberating, and especially for women. Please share where you live and how many years the world has enjoyed the gift of your presence.
So I'm fortunate to live just outside of Ottawa, Ontario, in Canada, north of the border. And I've lived here for about, over 50 years, I'd say. And I am 75 and 11/12.
So, Helen, your career began in education and spanned decades of leadership across sectors. Can you share a bit about your journey and what prompted your shift from educator to age advocate?
Yeah, I'd love to. Thank you. At university, I studied languages because I really thought I wanted to be an interpreter because at that point in time, you couldn't be a diplomat as a woman. So I'm talking now in the 1960s, right? So, you could be a secretary, a nurse, or an educator. And I told my dad, there's no way I wanted to ever be a teacher. In any case, long story sideways, I fell in love with a German after university and went off to Germany. And the only way in which I could sustain myself was to become a teacher of English and French. So that's where I started in Munich in the early 1970s and proceeded then in Canada when I came here shortly thereafter in the early 70s. And from that point on, I loved interacting with young people. I was with mostly teenagers because I was teaching secondary school. And I won't go through all the steps and procedures, but I became a principal and enjoyed the leadership role for
Right.
many decades as well, and went off also to an all girls school here in Ottawa. And in between that, I was one of the founding members of what's referred to as the Ontario Principals Council and was their fifth president. So that was an exciting role too.
Oh, I bet, but can I just have a shout out to single gender education? I went to an all women's MBA program, best thing I ever did, best experience. We weren't caught up in any semantics. And I think girls need to be in a classroom with each other. Was that your experience, Helen?
Yeah, and I never would have believed it if I hadn't experienced it myself.
Right.
I never thought of putting my daughter in an all-girls school, but after having been the head there for 4 years, I was convinced. And not only that, the statistics bear out that young women who then marry stay married longer, and most of the politicians in the United States who are women come from single sex or single gender education.
See, I love that. Thank you. I know, listener, that's a little bit of a sidebar, but
Yeah,
I'm such a fan. I love
I
hearing
am
that.
too. Yeah.
But what an incredible career you've had in a sector that your dad ended up being right. But I love how that you had such an impact and an imprint on people's lives as an educator, but also as a leader in the educational system in Canada. Was there a particular moment when you first felt the sting of ageism? And when it happened, how did it shape your next steps?
So before I got stung by ageism, I spent about a decade between the time I was head at the girls' school doing not-for-profit work and traveling all over the world. And wherever I went, I was able to offset my carbon footprint with volunteer work. And so I did that for about almost 10 years and worked on boards, was the chair of the Jane Goodall Institute of Canada. And the reason I mention all of this is because throughout all of this, there's always been a theme in my life, and that has to do with multi-generations or intergenerational, you know? So I've loved and learned as much. When you're head of a school or a principal, your staff come from various generations and you deal with it. Your public stakeholders are older, younger, grandpa, you name it. So I've always seen the benefit of every age. And that has been a real privilege because many people don't experience that.
Right.
So when I stopped doing all of the not-for-profit work, and I stopped simply because I was a little bit frustrated being involved in leadership communication courses for Bolivian Baha'i University leaders, and that's just an example of one. I never saw the end results of what I was doing. So I was a little bit frustrated, and I thought, I've got tons of energy still, and I want to do something and see some of the impact. But that's when I started questioning myself. And at this point, I'm in my mid 60s, and I'm thinking, well, what can I still do? And all those thoughts that are, you know,
Indoctrinated.
yeah, those beliefs that, oh my gosh, you're older, can you start something new? I started hearing all those tropes, those ageist tropes, like you're past your prime, or you can't learn anything when you're older. All of these various attitudes and beliefs that are ingrained in my generation, which is one of the reasons why I think boomers, and I hate referencing boomers or separate generations because that others the others. But I believe that in this case, we were indoctrinated with beauty creams to stay young and hair color to remain beautiful. And everything was so youth centric. We know
Right.
that.
Yes.
What's happening now is it's shifting. So it was at that point that I listened to something on the radio. I believe it was CBC, when somebody was being interviewed and they talked about ageism. And that's when I realized that what I was experiencing really was internalized ageism, that negative self-talk about all my limitations and hesitations were part and parcel of the portrait of an older person that existed 50 years ago.
Oh my gosh, you were singing the song for why I launched this podcast. There are folks who are working on ageism in the workplace, in society, right? I am all about what you just said, those internalized ageist beliefs that keep us shackled to some old meme that we don't even really know when we got that, other than it had been indoctrinated into our brain. And then all of a sudden we start limiting ourselves. We start having a vision for the future that is just not in alignment with who you are. And certainly what I've learned through chatting with so many pro-aging folks is that those folks in their 50s, in their pre-retirement years, have no intention of stopping working. They want to keep going. They want to keep bringing their glow to the world. This is just so important. So what was that next step that you took then? Because you said, okay, I'm hearing the ageism here, and I'm hearing that it's indoctrinated, that people like myself are listening to a story that we picked up 50 years ago. What did you do next?
Well, I started doing some research on ageism and aging, and read lots of books and so on. But it also coincided with something that was also significant, which I need to mention. I always have stayed in contact with many of my former students. And one of them, who I was very close to and had written lots of recommendations for and references, we stayed in close contact. So when she went for her interview, we went shopping together. She was graduating from a course called the Next 36, which was all about social entrepreneurship, and invited me to her graduation, essentially.
Nice.
And that's where I learned about social entrepreneurship, because as far as I knew, entrepreneurship was always tech oriented, and you had to be
Right.
a 20-year-old Mark Zuckerberg. That was the negative
Right.
impression I had about entrepreneurship. And she then brought me in Toronto to something called the Social Innovation Center. I want you to know this young woman is a great part of my life now, and I attribute so much to her. I think she's 50 years younger than me or so.
Yeah.
But just going into that building and seeing people collaborating and working on events that had social impact blew me away. So I took a few courses online about social entrepreneurship, and I tried to think, okay, where could I make a difference? And this is when I was experiencing these negative ageist beliefs. And I thought, maybe I should start something different. And at the same time, I was listening to the news and I was seeing in the paper top 30 under 30, top
Oh,
40 under 40. And I thought, excuse me, what about top 60 over 60? There's a real opportunity, in my opinion, to try and educate older adults to think with an entrepreneurial mindset. And that's something that I delved into as well. In terms of top 60 over 60, I ran the idea by a number of people. Everybody thought, ooh, that's a clever idea. And I trademarked it and I ran with it, but I never got around to actually hosting it yet. And I'm hoping that in this next year, I can get up the interest. I got sidetracked. I found out how many people were suffering from ageism, how many
right.
people were really limiting their own potential and not getting work and opportunity. They weren't valued or respected. They're considered irrelevant. In the healthcare system, they're diminished and shoved off to the side. I mean, especially as older women. And so I delved into that and I started providing courses and lectures and webinars. And then COVID came and I did it over the internet. All of that was great, but I also did it mostly for free. And I also discovered something really interesting, which was called EntreComp, which is a set of competencies that were identified as being totally aligned with an entrepreneurial mindset. And these are things like creativity, innovation, spotting opportunity, problem solving. So, with a grant that I received, developed with somebody who was working with me at the time, an entire course, which was researched. And we had two cohorts of 24 each of people between the ages of 55 and 75 to talk to them about the entrepreneurial mindset, using the whole focus on age and aging to try and help them eliminate any negative ageist thoughts that they had. And we conducted this one day a week over 3 weeks. We had meetups at night. We had it researched. It was a huge success. It was
Oh,
dynamite.
so excited.
It was really exciting. And it was called Reset because we were trying to reset the thinking about what it means to grow old and what our capacity really is.
Yeah.
So that was fascinating. And then actually COVID hit and we couldn't do that again. So been looking for other opportunities to re-engage other groups, but I haven't really put myself out there yet
Right.
to do that because I've been sidetracked all the time.
Oh, well, my gosh.
Yeah.
So easy to get sidetracked.
Yeah.
There's so much that I love about what you're doing, especially that you have identified some key markers in whether someone has the capacity to be an entrepreneur.
Mhm.
So, what a gift those two cohorts were. I'm sure you learned a ton from that experience. And I'm sure the studies that you've read and the data that you have show that a large increase in folks over 55 and 60 are starting their own businesses because they can't get the job. They
That's
can't
right.
find anybody to hire them. I mean, I know so many talented people, Helen, really capable, who I learned from just having a conversation with them. And that's right, Dr. Krista, I'm talking about you as an example. And can they find a job? And they interview beautifully. They've been all the things, they have all the degrees, they've got the creds.
Mhm.
It's just such a handicap to corporations to have this perception about older adults because it wastes generations of talent.
It does.
So,
Yeah.
how are you addressing that as well? Or do you focus mostly on entrepreneurs?
No, and I want to clarify, the entrepreneurial mindset does not necessarily mean that you are starting a business or you have
Right.
to. Those are competencies that are useful for volunteer work or
Yes.
any job that you might have. It's really a growth mindset, I would say, on steroids, which is good for everybody. So although it's called the entrepreneurial mindset, and I developed it in part because there is no support for older adults whatsoever for becoming an entrepreneur. But as I say, in this case, you didn't necessarily have to start a business in order to participate, or the outcome wasn't necessarily that, because you can apply the same competencies to and skills and attitudes to whatever you do. And that's the broad importance, I think, of understanding mindsets. And we talked more
Right.
about that. But
And yeah, and that's everything in this aging process, right?
absolutely. I mean, and I think in my TEDx talk, I talk about what I refer to as a longevity mindset. And by that, and people don't talk about that much.
Mm,
When I say a longevity mindset, one of the things I try to teach organizations or people that I'm talking to is about longevity literacy. I mean, it's very much like financial literacy or numeracy. If you don't understand some basic tenets, and one of the basic tenets is that we are all living longer than our parents or grandparents by 20 to 30 years.
right.
It's referred to as a longevity bonus. And yet, we're still in a 20th century paradigm where we talk about, learn, earn, retire. And retirement was formulated in 1930s when the average lifespan was 62.
Right.
Today it's 82 in North America, more or less. And my grandchildren have an average life expectancy of 100. So I mean,
Right.
they think that the person who's going to live 150 years has already been born, you know? So I'm not talking at all, when I talk about longevity, about preserving youth, nor am I talking about fighting aging. Aging is something that we do from birth onwards, We're younger today than we've ever been, and we're also older than we've ever been. And therefore, we need to understand that and plan our life differently. I mean, it's referred to as a new map of life. People are going to have portfolio careers, and our generation, has not yet, internalized a lot of that. We're on the cutting edge. And if we do not start to do things differently, which I believe we have, we won't be the role models that younger generations need. So that's why I believe so much in things like Top 60 over 60. We need role models. We need people like you and me who are in our 60s and 70s talking to young people and saying, look, I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro when I was 58.
Is that true, Helen? You did that?
Yeah, I did. I was doing it with my students. Yeah.
My
But
gosh.
yeah, we were building a school at the base, and then we had organized an adventure, an extended adventure up the mountain. And it took, I think, 7 or 8 days. It was great. It was wonderful. It was life changing.
Oh,
The
of
fact
course.
I was at the top, and I made it. A lot of people didn't. So it has nothing to do with age. It has to do with doesn't have to do with fitness either. It has to do with lung capacity, without oxygen. So it's 20,000 feet above sea level. And when you're that high, you see the curvature of the earth. And that's when I had an epiphany and decided, that's it. I'm not doing the education anymore. I'm finished.
Oh my gosh. Well, see, I love that was the catalyst. Listener, we're chatting with Helen Hirsh Spence today about her incredible work in the world, Top 60 over 60. Be sure to visit her website, Top 60, and that's 60, SIXTY, over XIXTY.com, to learn more about her extraordinary work in the world and the longevity mindset and literacy that she's bringing to us that we so desperately need for us to thrive after 65. So, how did you end up doing a TEDx talk?
I was trying to I was challenging myself. I'm, people talk about a fear of aging. I don't believe that they really fear aging. I believe, like myself, I fear cognitive decline,
Right.
or not being independent any longer. Those are the two big fears, I think. And I share those, or I shared those. So I wanted to see if I could do this. And I put my application in it, and I couldn't believe it. And I was successful, because it's really a competitive process. But what I didn't know is that I'd have to memorize 13 minutes of my talk with no slides or anything. And I had about 5 months to do that and write what I was going to say. And I had coaches, and they provided it in this particular case. And we did things together, the other 5 people. And really, it was just a challenge. But I really wanted to reach a larger audience with my message.
Yeah.
That was the other reason. Perhaps that was the first reason. But I really wanted to do something that I'd never done before. So that's
Oh
why
my
I did it.
gosh.
And I thought the message was important.
So important. And listener, I have the link in the show notes. So you just go in there and find the link and tap on that so you can see it. Or it's called Embrace Age with a Longevity Mindset,
Right.
TEDx Talk, right, Helen?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
It's on my speaking page as well on my website. So
excellent.
yeah. And I mean, so I'm proud of that and the end result.
And what surprised you most about how people reacted to it? I mean, were you worried that younger generations would be like, yeah, no, I'm bored by this, or so what? Or
No, it's interesting because if you look at it, and as I found out, I had over 100,000 views in the first month. That was the 4th most viewed TEDx talk in the month of July last year. There are hundreds of comments. And what I realized was that, this definitely was an eye opener for people my age, but especially for people who were younger, because it gave them hope, I think, to look forward to aging in a new and different way. And
see,
that's, yeah.
this is why I'm so excited about your work, especially the intergenerational collaboration and age equity in the workplace, because my experience of intergenerational, and you can imagine as someone who had a pitch event every month for 3 years and mentored startup founders, I was definitely the oldest person in the room by far.
Right.
But the under 30 crowd couldn't get enough of me. And I was always so surprised. I'm like, I got shoes older than you. And but they just thought I was the most exciting person in the room. And not because I had any money to give them or had any connections. So being valued and seeing that. And then I launched in March of 2024 the New England Podcasters Group monthly meetup. It's all intergenerational. And I think what you're doing and I'm doing, and anyone who's doing intergenerational work, is we are representing how wonderful it is to be engaged and collaborating with older adults instead of kicking them out of the room and sending them off to pasture. So, talk about this with your work and what you're seeing in the workplace and about older workers.
Well, I think and so does anybody who's listening, how difficult it is, especially for women, to get a position back in the workforce in their mid 50s or longer. And the stats tell us that it takes a woman typically 2 years, whereas it might take a man 6 months. And then they're often in positions that are not valuing their expertise or experience. One of the things I think that women in particular don't recognize is that they have much greater capacity and potential than they could possibly imagine, even if they're staying at home, and especially if they're staying home, managing household, children. They give up a lot for those years in terms, they may have started a career, then they lose time. So they're really always in a
Deficit mode almost.
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
And then when they get to be 55 or so, or 50, many of them tend to be divorced, single, widowed, separated.
Right.
They need to work. And
They do.
so it's really critical. But many of them are finding that starting a small enterprise works for them, and they can use all of those skills. And so, in terms of the intergenerational capacity that we have now, because in the workforce, we have up to 5 generations working together. And that's something that we never had more than 3 generations when I was alive, and mostly we didn't even have that. So 5 is quite a bargain and a
Quite a
challenge.
range. Quite
Quite
a
a,
range.
and one of
And
the Yeah, one of the things I think that's unfortunate is that many older people think that they know so much because of their life experience, and they do. But I have to tell you, these younger folk have just as much to teach us. And so we need to start thinking more in terms of reciprocal mentorship, I call it, rather than, you know, old fashioned mentorship where the older person is the wise one, which it is traditionally. But there's so much benefit to engaging younger and older together, and especially in the workforce, so that they understand each other, so that they get a grip on what it means to grow older.
Right. So you've got innovation, you've got the early years of excitement. And what's great about the older generations, working the older adults, is they've got, I've made that mistake, I've made that mistake, and here's what I learned. But most importantly, for where we are today, June 2025, we are in some big economic upheavals, especially here in the US, where you're going to need the unflappable, seasoned, been there, done that,
Right.
know how to get a new customer under the worst circumstances, know how to, build and create and do all these things under horrific times because they've been there from 1987 collapse to 9/11 to 2008. I mean, we've had so many setbacks over the decades that we've had to work through. We get to bring that wisdom to the younger folks who are going, oh my God, what do I do? What do I do? How do I put this fire out? So I think it's just so important now more than ever
Mhm.
that we have this intergenerational collaboration, Helen.
One of the things that I did during COVID was start a series called Conversations Across Generations. And I had lots and lots of people globally, like from young people from South Africa, older people from all over. Those were such rich conversations. We had a theme and somebody would talk and then we'd break out into smaller groups and so on. It was excellent. One of the things that I learned is that many young people don't know how to approach older people, even though they really would love to do so. They need the opportunity to do so. They need an excuse. They're intimidated sometimes, or it's not that they're dismissive of older people, they just don't know what to say or where to say. So if you can facilitate that in a workplace in particular and talk about different types of communication and so on, it's dramatic. Once I gave a talk to a group of people, there were a lot of teenagers in the group, and it was about ageism in general and how it impacts individuals. Every one of them came up to me afterwards and said they never had heard of ageism. This is 2 years ago. They know about sexism, racism,
All
homophobia,
the isms.
all the isms, but they'd never heard of ageism. And for a group of young people who are interested in social justice to the extent that they are, we're missing out on a big opportunity here.
It's one of the last socially accepted
Absolutely.
prejudices out there,
But they
ageism.
they don't recognize it. They don't know about it. So that's a group that needs
Right.
to be
And
targeted.
they also see people treating someone our age in an infantilized way. Oh, honey,
Absolutely.
can I get that for? Oh, sweetie, sit, all this stuff. It's like, I want to slap that person when they talk to me like that. I go, the name's Ande.
Mhm,
I've been around a lot of decades, you
mhm.
know.
I can answer for myself. They
She's
always
always,
talk, I mean, the healthcare industry is
oh,
known for its unfortunate elder speak, which is patronizing or infantilizing language.
don't
But
get me
it
started.
happens all over the place in restaurants, where there's a QR code and the server comes up and says, "Here, give me your phone and I'll get you the menu," instead of, so the assumption is that you're not tech savvy enough to figure it out.
Now,
But don't
Helen,
and that's unintentional bias, but it's still bias and it still needs to be corrected.
Helen, this is why another reason why I launched Don't Be Caged by Your Age in the startup industry. How many times did I hear explain your business as if you were telling your grandma?
Yeah,
First of all, it was never grandpa,
no,
gendered ageism,
right.
grandma. And I would say to folks, look, we were building tech companies in the 70s, gaming with mainframes and punch cards in the 80s. And we had to transition from dial phones to punch phones to answering machines to the internet to email
Mhm.
to video online, all these things. What makes you think for a second that we're stupid with technology? My goodness.
Well, there's so many myths. I mean, that's just one of them. To think also that they think that we're taking jobs away from younger people, which is the lump of labor fallacy, according to economists, which is also baloney.
Yeah.
And, I mean, there's so many, but elder speak really is dangerous because it's it is telling the person that they're no longer capable of doing something or
Oh,
saying something or speaking for themselves. Do you realize that it's a $38.3 trillion GDP loss in the United States by
yes.
not using the expertise of older
Yes.
adults? You know?
Well, and you probably know this stat that, listener, I know you hear me say this all the time. The World Health Organization declared retirement an epidemic that's costing societies billions of dollars.
Mhm.
Because when someone is no longer on purpose and they can't find work, they start to go downhill. And all of a sudden, they start having all the health challenges and the mental challenges and all the things. And it takes a toll, not just on them, but their extended family members.
Absolutely.
And organizations then get impacted because of the ripple effect.
And they need elder care benefits now. There are more families, or the statistic is such that there are more people in the workplace now that need elder care benefits than child care.
That's right.
That's
That's right.
scary. Yeah.
That's very scary. Listener, are you enjoying this conversation as much as I am? If yes, please join the movement to end ageism and celebrate pro aging. For just $5, you can sponsor the Don't Be Caged by Your Age podcast and help amplify inspiring voices like Helen, break age related stereotypes, and help me reach more listeners worldwide. Just visit buymeacoffee.com/Andy Lyons and let's make aging a journey of joy and possibility together. Thank you so much for supporting the podcast. Okay, so we had great conversations about championing longevity literacy and how we need to shift our mindsets. What one piece of advice can you leave listeners with? One action that they can take to fight ageism in their own lives or communities? What would that be?
Well, I think that what they need to do is embrace their age with a longevity mindset. They really have to realize that aging longer is the new norm rather than the exception. And that means certain changes in attitudes and behaviors. Because if they don't do that, it's a self fulfilling prophecy. If you don't think positively about what it means to grow older, and I say grow older instead of get older because we do grow as we age, it's an opportunity to learn that much more and to experience that much more. And so it is about growing older. And that's positive because look at what the alternative is.
Right. Oh,
It's
it's a privilege, listener, to be this age. And one of the side benefits that I think you'll take joy in, Helen, from this podcast are the 40 and 50-year-olds, especially the women, coming up to me going, oh my gosh, like I have a whole new vision for my life in 60s and 70s and 80s. Like I almost can't wait to get there because I'm feeling so much more hopeful. And I'm sure you're experiencing that with folks when you get out there and speak and share your message. Yes?
I do, I do. And I also emphasize all the benefits that there are to aging that most people never hear about. They only hear about the negative. So,
Well, we'll talk about some of those benefits.
okay, gladly. Well, one of them, for instance, is what's referred to as crystallized intelligence. It's different from what a younger person has, which is called fluid intelligence. And that just means that all the experiences and problem solving techniques are put together in a way in which we can come up with different kinds of solutions, sometimes better, but they combined with younger generations fluid intelligence, which means that it's quicker and it comes more naturally. Like solving a puzzle might take them 5 minutes, it might take me 10, but it's because we have so much stored in here that it's harder to access it. But we have greater emotional regulation as we age. We have more resilience. Our egos aren't as much on the line. I mean, I know I was a competitive individual, right? Growing up, I wanted to become a principal when women weren't principals in secondary schools. And I couldn't care less now
Right.
how many people are in the area that I'm working in. They have better bihemispheric processing as they gain. They have greater on task focus and concentration. You know, all of these things occur because the brain is changing. And the most important thing, I think, is to understand that with neuroplasticity, our brains continue to rewire, and therefore we can learn whatever we really want.
At any time, and you can heal trauma, folks, because at our age, we've had a lot of trauma. We have a lot of PTSD. You can wire it out of the brain with neuroplasticity, provided you've got a good trauma doctor working with you. I love all of that. I want that all on a list. I want
I've got it.
everything.
I've got a
Oh,
list.
would you please send that to me? Because I want to share that everywhere that Don't Be Caged by Age is carrying. I want to put it in the resource section of the website as well, because that's so inspirational. I also, if you could just address one more thing for me, because I know so many women who have just crested 50 or might be in their mid 50s, were laid off, right? Or had to step back for a few years due to family matters. And now, where they were revered earlier, are having such a hard time. Any last piece of advice for them to get through this time and how to reframe their journey? Because you can imagine 100 resumes out there and a few, maybe one or two interviews, the level of discouragement is debilitating.
Yeah, I mean, there's no easy fix to that. At Unfortunately, I mean, in those situations, rather than getting out the resumes, I always recommend, because I work with those women too, to network. Networking is the way in which they're going to find a job. But in terms of the discouragement, I think they have to understand, they have to look at the trajectory of their life as being as this long outside the frame, as opposed to short. They need to think differently. This is a difficult time for them, but they are going to have other careers as well. It's like a portfolio career. And they have to talk to themselves with compassion and kindness, as if they were talking to a dear friend, and realize that they have to just get through it.
Yeah.
And they have to persist. You have to be resilient, but do something different. Getting all those resumes in and
Yeah.
answering all of those calls will never get you as far.
Thank you. Thank you, Helen, for that wonderful piece of advice, but also for that view through your lens, remembering that this will be a tough time, but you will get to the other side of it and find interesting things to do, like launching a podcast, which is
Mhm.
so easy and breezy.
That's what people need to do. They need to think outside the box. They need
That's
to
right.
step out of their comfort zone. And
Oh
they,
my gosh. I took so many notes, everybody. I have to tell you, this has been a delicious conversation. Listener, what's your thought? I'd love to hear. I know Helen would love to hear. Please drop a comment wherever you find Don't Be Caged by Your Age. That could be on Spotify. They let you leave comments there. You can do it on LinkedIn on our page or Instagram or on the website. You can even leave me a voicemail on the website. How cool is that? You can hit that little mic button and say, "Hey, Andy, I really like that conversation you had with Helen, and here are my thoughts." So try it out. And also be sure to join the Don't Be Caged or subscribe to the Don't Be Caged by Your Age newsletter. Once a month, I do a recap of these delicious conversations with pro aging folks who are shattering all those age related expectations and stereotypes and providing the best resources so we can thrive after 65. And you know what you need to do. You need to go right on over to top60over60.com and connect with Helen everywhere she glows, but especially on LinkedIn as Helen Hirsh Spence. Any last thoughts before I log off here, Helen?
just embrace aging. It's a gift, and we do it from birth onwards. And yet we always think of it just as the end stages of life. And that's not the case.
That's right. It's not a barrier,
Mm-mm.
right?
It's an asset.
It's an
It's
asset.
a
So,
strategic advantage for businesses too.
oh, it sure is. And boy, I can't wait for it to dissolve their ageist beliefs. God, what a barrier
It's a
to
big
entry.
job. It's a big job. And hire me. Hire me to speak to your audiences. That's what I want to do. I want to get the message out positively about what it means to grow older in the 21st century.
Excellent. That's what a call to action looks like, folks. Woohoo! I love it. Thank you, Helen. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your advice, your longevity mindset with us today. I really appreciate your time and presence with us.
Well, it's been my pleasure. Thank you, Andy.
And listener, please remember you have so much more to give. Don't let those internalized ageist beliefs prevent you from pursuing new dreams and opportunities. The world needs you. Keep glowing and keep growing, okay? And until next time, I'm wishing you a delicious day everywhere you glow. Cheers from Boston. Mwah, everyone. Listeners, I'm so grateful you carved out time to tune in and grab the gems from this delicious conversation. Be sure to hop on over to Don't Be Caged by Your Age on LinkedIn or Instagram to share your thoughts about ageism and unretirement. Because in this space, your age doesn't define you, it refines you. If you are inspired by a story you hear, it would mean the world to me if you would subscribe, share, rate, and review the podcast. To receive an alert whenever a new show is posted, please join the Don't Be Caged by Your Age newsletter. Every month, you'll receive links to the podcast and helpful resources for creating possibilities for your unretirement days. Thank you for tuning in. I am so excited to hear how you found ways to thrive after 65. Waving from Boston, cheers.